My name is Ashley Faber, and I have been coming to Hope since July of 2020 when we moved back to Albert Lea. I lived in the state of Wyoming, and I had been there since 2006, but I actually grew up in Albert Lea, so this is my hometown. So I was moving back to be around some family again and to raise my kids. I met my husband in 2008. We met and got married, and then we moved to Cody, Wyoming, and then shortly after that got pregnant. So we got married in September, and I found out I was pregnant the following February with our first child. My pregnancy was going what I would consider normal. Went in for our 12-week ultrasound, and we found out it was a boy, which was really exciting for us. I was due in November, and we ended up having a planned vacation on a cruise. And a week before our vacation, I ended up having some spotting and bleeding, and went into the doctor, and everything was fine, but was encouraged not to go on the cruise. But since the bleeding and stuff had stopped, that we got permission to go on that vacation. So we ended up going down to New Orleans and spending a week doing things around the city instead of going on the cruise. And 2 days before the end of our vacation, I later found out to be contractions throughout the night. And I woke up that morning and went to the bathroom, and there was more blood. We went into the ER and ultimately were transferred to another hospital by ambulance because they realized I was in an active labor at that point. And I was only 23 weeks along in my pregnancy, so it was really, really early. Yeah, it was just really scary. And I was wheeled back for an emergency cesarean section. Yeah, I woke up and we had a baby, our baby boy. His name was Walker, and he was in the NICU. And so I got wheeled back and got to see him in the NICU in his incubator. And he was this beautiful 1 pound, 6 ounce, 12 inches long baby boy who had all of his, just a tiny little baby in this incubator. I was just amazed at how beautiful he was. But how perfect he was, even how little. So, yeah. And that was an experience, to say the least. He had bleeding on his brain from just the process of having him. And so we just had to wait and see kind of what would happen. It was a difficult process to walk through something so traumatic and be really far away from your support system. Because you don't have many people to rely on. Wow. I haven't talked about this in a long time. Ultimately, 8 days later, the brain bleed just kind of continued to expand, and we were encouraged to kind of think about what kind of life he would have, because it was just taking so much of his brain space. And so we had a conversation about pulling life support. And I remember actually feeling a huge sense of peace about the decision. I had noticed over time that he wasn't really as active as he was when he was first born. And I could just tell that if we kept him on all of the breathing apparatuses and stuff, that he probably wouldn't survive much longer anyway. And that it would be better for him to just meet Jesus instead. And that's what we decided, is that we would remove all the stuff and allow him just to be healed and be whole in heaven instead. And so the next morning, that's what we did. And for the first time, I was able to hold him and just spend time with him and allow him to find peace. And I'm so thankful that I was able to do that. And yeah, to this day, I'm thankful that God has just given me peace with that decision. I haven't second guessed it, and I see him now up in heaven, and he's always on a playground in my head. He's always playing with other little kids. It was a quite lonely experience, and I look back at him. I don't know, I'm thankful where God has led us, because it was just so chaotic and all over the place. So, yeah, it was weird going home when you leave pregnant and you come home without a baby. And I remember just feeling like it was really hard to feel like I was a mom. Like, I knew I was a mom, but I never had any of those experiences as a mom. Like, we didn't have a car seat. We didn't have a baby to bring home. So it was really hard to attach to those kind of things. Like, the only thing I could share with people was pictures. That's all I had. So it was a lot of ups and downs for the next couple of years, really. So those 2 years, I had a lot of tears and a lot of questioning and a lot of somewhat guilt sometimes, dealing with guilt over going on vacation or not going to the hospital right away when I felt what I thought were possibly contractions, and kind of talking myself out of that. So yeah, there was a lot of ups and downs in that during that time. But eventually I was finally given the green light to try again. And the next month I was pregnant. And God was gracious. He didn't make me wait long after finally get the go-ahead. And I got pregnant with our next son. We found out he was a boy. And so I then traveled through that pregnancy, and now looking back, that pregnancy went beautifully. I didn't have any complications, and I was able to deliver him through C-section again. He was a perfect little boy. And I vividly remember him crying and just feeling a sense of relief, like he made it. He's finally here. But I had a really hard time preparing for him, being excited about him coming. I didn't even get his crib until after he was here, because I didn't want something to happen and have to get rid of it like I did the first time, so. But he was a perfect little boy. But he was finally here, and then I could feel like a mom. I felt like a mom finally. Was able to bring him home and have the excitement of being up all night, or the colicky baby, or trying to figure out all the ups and downs of what it means to be a parent and the hardships of learning what that looks like. But also being able to enjoy what pregnancy should look like without complications was nice too. About 2.5 years later, we ended up having, or getting pregnant again and having another boy. This time it was a surprise. We didn't find out until he came, which was exciting for me. My husband hated it. And yes, we had a third boy. His name is Caleb. And life was good. It was fun to add another brood to the mix and see their interaction with one another. I turned 40 in 2024. And so I was going in just for my normal health check, knowing that I was at that lovely age of having mammograms. And so I had set that up or I had talked to the doctor about it. And I had noticed a little bit of change in my right breast prior to going in. So I was not excited about a mammogram, but I knew I needed one and was hopeful it would maybe help me understand what was going on. Anyway, went in for my mammogram and was instantly brought in to have an ultrasound done. And I just knew it didn't look good, but was hopeful there wasn't anything big to worry about. Had the biopsy done and I had to wait. It was another week for results to come back in. So there's a lot of period of waiting involved. Then my doctor gave me a call and she told me that I had tested positive for breast cancer, which was invasive ductal carcinoma is what it was called, which is the most common form of breast cancer. I just remember getting off the phone with her and just being like, holy moly, like, I have cancer. And saying those words was scary. It came with a lot of unknown. So I found out I had cancer mid-August, and I didn't see a doctor until the beginning of September, finally. So I finally met with a doctor who gave me more information, helped me understand more about my cancer, but didn't have all the answers yet because they wanted to do additional testing. I had additional biopsies. I had more MRIs or mammograms. I had MRIs done so that they could gain more insight into where my cancer was and how to create a plan going forward. And yeah, there's just a lot of testing in that process of waiting again. But when I look back, I'm so thankful because God, I never once struggled to sleep during this time. He gifted me with good sleep and patience. And I came to the church family. I remember coming down and being prayed over and feeling blessed by that. Like, it just gave me a sense of calm, that reminding me, like, I'm not fighting this alone, even though it feels lonely. I'm not alone. I have so many people in my corner, and I have a God who has an army of angels, and I can rely on those things during that process, which is really nice. got to meet with my team of doctors. That game plan came with more testing. Felt like it was like a never-ending array of testing. And then I finally started chemotherapy. I went in every other week, and I did that for 8 weeks. So I finished chemo at the end of February, and I was very thankful to be done. I also realized that God protected me during chemo a ton. I remember there were times where I just, again, felt really lonely, but I remembered the importance of being part of the family of God, of coming to church. That would just kind of reinvigorate me for the week. Even if I was having a hard week, like coming to church was so important for me. I'm so thankful that even in the midst of that, like I could come to church and be reminded of who God was and how he was being used in my story. I never once questioned that God was going to use it, even if I was struggling at that time. Yeah, so I finished chemo, then I was scheduled for surgery. So I had my double mastectomy, and all of that went well. All of my pathology results came back, all of the lump, and had good edges around where they took out and removed my cancer, which was great. So then I had about a month of it was probably 8 weeks of recovery in reality, but all the known cancer cells that we had found had been removed, and so I was considered in remission from that point on, which is awesome. But because they found so many lymph nodes, they encouraged me to do radiation to make sure that if there were any kind of anything possibly growing, that we weren't missing anything. And so I ended up starting radiation in May. I had to wait so many weeks after surgery to allow your body to heal some. And I did 3 weeks of radiation, going in daily for 3 weeks, and finishing radiation, being able to ring the bell, which felt amazing. I just passed the year mark of surgery, and it feels good to be able to say I'm a year cancer-free. Yeah, just so thankful to be here and to be able to share my story of how God was working through it all. In all of those circumstances, I was able to feel a sense of peace in both losing my son and dealing with cancer, which are 2 huge traumas. And there are the times where I think I've experienced God's peace in the ways I can't describe. And I'm so thankful that I can look back at both of those situations and I was able to say in and through both of those situations that God was good. I remember when Pastor Caleb in HDS was talking about how God rejoices over us. And he used the term, one of the words in the Bible, I can't remember what the word was, but he said the definition was like God spins like a top for us. He rejoices over us that way. And how much we were talking about worship and how oftentimes we just kind of stay in our own little bubble, and we are afraid of what people might think of us if we move around in worship or what we do in worship to God. And when he said that, like spins like a top, it just made me realize like how excited God is for me. And it changed my perspective of my excitement for God. And I find myself not being able to stop moving when I'm worshiping, or that desire to grow deeper in my understanding of who he is and his love for me, and be able to find my identity in him has exponentially changed over the idea of God spinning like a top for me and how I want to spin like a top for him in all that I say and do. And it's just been an amazing journey for me over the last over almost the last year, I guess. We're coming on a year of just change in my view of who God is and how he has used my personal devotions and used HDS and the church to to reinvigorate for God and for the Savior who has made it all possible to make it through the ups and downs of life. And I can rejoice in that.